IVM.
How do credit card payments work on Cred? Well, for one, you can win crazy jackpots and offers when you use the Cred app to pay your credit card bills. Download the Cred app to find out more. They have daily rewards and cashbacks, especially this IPL season, so don't miss out. Hello and welcome to Simplified, the show where everything matters and the points don't. I should work on that intro. I really need to work on that intro.
I think we should do a compilation of just all the intros we have given to Simplified. I think we have 500 different ones.
Actually, I would pitch for a compilation of the endings when Naren does that. Stay safe. That would be a pretty cool compilation. And it would be much easier for
researchers. If researchers take my blood pressure when that time comes, it will be the highest because my mind is busy searching for what to say.
Wow.
And usually it will be some completely lame thing which comes up.
So, Naren, so before we start this episode, or before we talk about the topic du jour, congrats on getting jabbed. What was the experience
thank you
like?
so much. Yes, so
are you COVID-shielded or are you COVAXed?
I am COVID-shielded. Yeah.
Very well done.
So COVID-shield is the AstraZeneca one, right?
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
Oh, nice. Good. Legit vaccine. Good stuff.
So this
Wow.
is
The EU does not like this. EU has disliked Sriket's post. Sorry.
Yeah, so Sheila and I were on our way to office, and we wanted to find out. There's a place close to our factory where vaccination is given. So we thought we'll just find out what is a procedure for enrolling. And they said, "Oh, please come," and they gave us the vaccination. That was it.
No, this is actually something quite surprising. My parents also, they were at the hospital for like my dad, some other random checkup. And they saw this vaccination ka whatever something, and they just went to ask. And those people are like, I mean, if it's available, they just like literally they drag them and give them the shot. There's barely any consent asked in some ways. So they were like, aaja, bed jao. And then before I know it, the vaccine shot's been given already.
No, very well trained. It's a pretty down market place, and it's as far away from sort of Breach Candy Hospital or Jaslow or whatever as you can imagine. But the staff was so nice and well trained, and they knew. And it was the least painful injection I've ever had. I barely feel it. You could just, of course, the arm became a little sore afterwards, like in the evening. But at the time of giving the injection, it was just painless. Just didn't even feel it.
You have not had any side effects?
A soreness. I was feeling extremely sort of listless and dull. But that could also be because Sheila was watching some TV. So, so I don't know whether it's the vaccine or that, but yeah. So, after that, it was fine. So
So you got a certificate of some sort, which says
you get a text message saying that you got, but that's about it. Yeah.
And they called you again after 28 days or something, no?
They called me after 8 weeks.
8 weeks? Oh, yeah. So they're doing this thing where...
So that has changed, yeah.
What, Tony, you were saying?
No. I think now the period between two jabs is significantly changed, right? 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yeah. Basically, it's just to stagger this thing because they're like... And also, apparently, the effectiveness is better if it's taken later.
Yes.
Stagger the stabber.
Yes.
So for this week, we have we're deviating slightly from the profundity to what I believe is one of the most awesome trolls of the week, in fact, of the year so far.
McKinsey report on COVID-19 impact.
But in slightly less controversial issues. This is trolling Tesla, not the overall company or Elon Musk, but the car itself, the Tesla car.
And not Nikola, importantly. We are not trolling. We are not trolling the Tesla.
We are not. Edison.
The Serbian dude.
So we are. So anyway.
Yeah, not Tesla G, Tesla S. Yeah.
What?
But like,
Well done. True to form. The vaccine seems to have equipped you with a lot of dad jokes, Naren. Anyway, so Tesla, as you guys know, I mean, of self-driving car fame, has a surprisingly outdated way of determining the speed limit of the road that it's traveling on.
Okay.
So it has this way where it basically reads in the US, considering there are a lot of, I mean, road signs are very ubiquitous and not stolen to make a random foundry in different places. So they are, so these road signs, of course, they depict the speed limit, and the Tesla actually reads it from the road signs itself, or what the speed limit for the street is, and
Right.
maintains according to that. Which I found was quite old school, because Waze and all, a lot of services have the speed limits of all the roads programmed on their database as such. But obviously, people found a way to troll this. So all these guys did was just basically just extend, if you can see over here, extend the 3 on the speed limit of 35 just a little longer. And that made the Teslas accelerate automatically to 85 miles per hour, because they read it as an 8 instead of a 3.
Wow.
So this is where, so I mean, just for, I mean, those who are listening on non-audio mediums, the second stick of the 3 has just been extended a little longer to make it look kind of like an 8, so that it might be confused for an 8. And that caused all auto-driving Teslas to accelerate at 85 miles per hour and 35 miles per hour streets. So I found that to be a delightful troll.
That's amazing.
Wow.
And I love how you called that the second stick of the 3. Which makes me want to realize, like, are each of these things like...
Hey, I was thinking of a calculator, okay?
Yeah,
Like
fair enough.
digital
Yeah,
key.
fair enough. All right.
So yeah, that was the troll of the week.
Yeah.
And that once now that that's behind us, the other one, which is also a fairly unintentional troll of recent times, which was generally trolling the capitalist economy that we have right now with simple physics, was the blockage of the Suez Canal. So yeah, so let's explore in a little bit of detail what that thing was. So what the Suez Canal crisis was. So let's first look at what the Suez Canal itself is, or to give it its full Christian, not Christian.
Full name, just say
Arabic,
full name. I think it's about time we just start.
name.
Yeah, let's just call it full name from now on.
Yeah, but it's full Christian. Here, actually, it's a full Arabic name and not a Christian name.
Oh, it
which
has
is
an actual
basically-
full Arabic name.
No, I
yeah.
object.
but-
There are Arabic Christians too. So yeah,
Oh,
Fair.
well
so,
played.
yeah.
Fair.
It could be Arabic and Christian. Yeah.
Wow.
yeah, in fact,
Yes.
Jesus himself is a
Oh, you
Arabic Christian.
Arabic Christian.
Technically,
I was trying to count how quickly we will be quoting controversy over here in a topic as benign as this. But yeah, here we are. Right before I've gotten into the first fact of the show, which is so the full Arabic name is basically quite simple. It's Qanato as Suez. So it's Suez Canal,
Hey.
Qanato as Suez, which is, but Suez is the real name of what's called Suez is the anglicization of it. It's Suez, which is a city. Actually, funny enough, the interesting part of the Suez Canal is it's not entirely based in the city of Suez. It's the end point of the canal. It starts at Port Said, and the end point is the city of Suez. So it's named after the end point of the canal, not the beginning of it. And it's basically this artificial sea level waterway. So first of all, which is also a big misconception, this is not a natural canal. It's been artificially created. There was no connecting land between the two. But funnily enough, historically there has been even before. So this canal was constructed in 1860. It was completed in 1869. There is evidence of since the Egyptian times, which is fairly BC times, to put it.
As Virat Kohli would say, yeah.
Yeah.
As Virat Kohli would say. But so that there were certain temporary canals that were dug to kind of channel the water from the Red Sea into the particular area, because it was quite low-lying and used to get a little flooded when different tides used to happen. So there were temporary man-made canals dug from prehistoric times at various points. And so once these canals were observed, eventually, finally, as most marvels are built because of colonial pressures by, funnily enough, the French. So this is also an interesting part where actually initially the British powers were actually opposed to the Suez Canal because they controlled the Cape of Good Hope shipping route. And if you look at the geography of things, from the Suez Canal, the first ports are actually all the Mediterranean countries because they are the closest ones to the Suez Canal, versus anything coming from the Cape of Good Hope would have to pass through England. So England was the hub at that time. And so in fact, they were actually quite opposed to it. So the French were actually leading the charge for building the Suez Canal, where there is the architect Ferdinand de Lesseps, who formed the Suez Canal Company under and kind of did some usual colonial underhanded dealings with the Ottoman Empire to construct the canal. Now, what's also interesting is when you think of canal, you're thinking of that ditch where garbage is rotting next to your house. This is a little bigger than that. It is actually 193 kilometers in length. It actually has and because of this length and the width and the narrow width of the canal, it can only accommodate 50 ships a day. But this is almost non-stop, where there is like non-stop travel of ships through the day entirely. And it's also and what the significance of the Suez Canal primarily is, of course, I mean, very simply, you can see how it cuts that distance, but how much it cuts the distance versus the Cape of Good Hope travel around South Africa is that it reduces the journey by almost 8,900 kilometers from Europe to Asia. Right.
Wow.
So and also the journey would also be 14 days shorter, even in modern shipping conditions. So 14 days is obviously in capitalistic terms an epoch. So 14 days makes all the difference, and that's where the whole world came to a standstill effectively when this particular ship was blocked. Now, there's a lot of history of the Suez Canal. In fact, the Suez Canal is so critical that in 1954 there were disagreements with the Egyptian premier at the time and the Western European powers, and he basically did the equivalent of "my bad, I'm going home," where he took control of the Suez Canal and said, "Bye, nobody's allowed." And he basically, more importantly than anything else, he said, "No Israeli ships will be allowed." So, which Israel was like, "Dude, we are this small. Why?" Israel, along with the European powers, they almost descended onto a war. In fact, Israel and Egypt got into that Arab-Israeli war at that time, where eventually there was this resolution, and then afterwards everyone came to their senses. Money spoke eventually, and things got back to normal. So that's where this particular ship makes a big difference. This particular canal makes a big difference, right? What was the ship that was passing through? Now, because this canal is this narrow, it has very strict regulations of which kind of ships can pass through it and how much they can weigh, what their tonnage is, what their displacement is. All of these become really important things. Now, what needs to be understood is literally the ship that got trapped over there was literally at the edge of all the limits. Like, it was within it, but it was literally the edge of every limit that was given. Like 400 meters in length is the limit of 400 meters in width is the limit of how long a ship can pass through. And this ship exactly is that. In fact, it was constructed in a way that it would be Suez Canal worthy, right? So the Ever Given, which is by the company Evergreen, which was the biggest misnomer because everyone saw these pictures with Evergreen written on the side. But Evergreen is the parent company. Ever Given is the ship.
Yeah, but one key fact here, Ever Given is actually just the middle name of the ship. The full name of the ship is most number of ever given about shipping.
I see somebody has been listening to the Bugle. Well done, Tony.
Chuck, by the way, I made this joke before Alice Fraser did, so
well done.
you can look it up on
I saw it on Tony's Twitter.
Yeah.
Well done.
You put it on Twitter, right?
Yes, I did it. Yeah.
I basically fell off laughing.
Shrikesh, also, now that Tony has afforded us a break, may I also congratulate you for being the first ever person to ever say on Simplified, "Where is my data?"
Hey man,
he's gotten slightly canal about
I
this.
can't lose all of that. we need to maintain that veneer of being an informational podcast. All right, this right there was the veneer. Anyway,
Yeah.
so
One question.
Yeah, go
Is
ahead.
this Suez Canal is not a two-way thing, right? It's not a one-way, right? It's a two-way.
it's a two-way canal.
So
Yeah, but
they have to
kind of
wait
defeat the
till
purpose,
all
actually.
these boats have come out of one end and in the other end. So there'll be times when the entire
Mistake
canal
happens right in the
empty.
middle. Like who's going to back
Yeah.
up? Like in a bridge
Yeah, so
scenario.
Reminds
how
me
it
of
works is
this. Reminds
Yeah,
me
go
of
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Park Street in Calcutta in the early 80s. Okay,
Oh.
so Park Street was this very arterial road. It's still an arterial road, but it's like very important road in Calcutta, which because of increasing traffic, the police decided it had to be a one way. But people living on the wrong way of the one way protested. So then the police said, okay, till 1 o'clock in the morning, it's one way in this direction. After 1 o'clock till whatever time next day, it's in the other direction. So that was fine, except that Calcutta being Calcutta, everyone consulted their own watches. Okay, so as to, it was brilliant. And I happened to be caught in that, and we ended up missing our flight because there was a severe one-way negotiation happening right in the middle, and our taxi couldn't go in.
Yeah, that's why they call it Park Street, because
Yeah,
it's a gigantic parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
but that's
so
actually a
Shriket
very
is
good-
telling us when Suez Canal became Park Street for a day.
Yeah.
But do
week, yeah.
ships have to wait in order to enter
So
the
this
canal?
this is how, yes. So that is true. They have a waiting area on each end. But what also happens is you don't need to wait at the end of the canal for one ship to pass and then the other ship to pass, because the canal is not even in width at every point in time. There are lakes in the middle of the canal. So there's a bitter lake and different areas of the canal which
Wait,
are
there's a
very
lake
wide.
inside. There's a lake inside a canal. There's a water body inside another water body.
So
It's like
so in fact,
fatter, wider, yeah.
yeah, so it becomes exactly that the whole canal becomes fatter and wider depending on the point of the canal. So in fact,
Like how I'm wide in the middle and like well proportioned elsewhere, like that. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay.
so in fact, considering that we have a visual medium, I can actually try and depict that a little bit, where it is something like that. So as you can see, there's that Great Bitter Lake in the middle, and there are some holding areas in the middle. And then certain areas are actually split both ways, but certain areas are actually really thin.
It looks like a burette.
Yeah,
Ah.
pretty much. So in some ways, when you look at the Suez Canal, so what happens is a lot of
Pipette,
ships.
actually.
Yeah. One
Yeah,
of those.
pipette in some parts, burette in some parts. but yeah, so as you can see, there are holding areas on both ends. So there are like these holding areas where actually ships can wait. But then afterwards, as they pass through in the middle, there are certain times that they wait over here also in the middle, and then certain areas are two-way lanes. So you can pass through either way. But there's this particular part as well as this particular part which are very thin one-way lanes.
No.
So actually, this reminds me a lot of roads in Himachal. You know, in Himachal, it's actually quite similar. So in Himachal, when you pass through stuff, there's suddenly you have like these big two-way lanes and like proper highway, suddenly transporting into a small goat path where when someone's trying to drive their massive sumo out of, and like, this kind of reminds me of that. And also having recently suffered through that, also it reminds me of the human body's when particular problems when you have kidney stones. So this is exactly what happened.
So
this was the kidney stone of this is capitalism's kidney stone.
Yeah.
So the reason I asked about whether it needs to wait at the end was because obviously now that the ship got stuck, people were looking at everything that it did before, right? And right before it entered the Suez Canal, it actually drew peep and balls in its trajectory. So this is real. And and apparently it is, I assume that it is because you have to like wait a certain time before you have to enter the canal, and then you just like go round and round like a plane does before it lands.
Circling. Yeah, no, that is true. There is a lot of, generally also there's waiting, and there's also waiting for another reason which I'll get to eventually. So let's talk about, firstly, do you guys know, so the ship was headed to Netherlands. Do you guys know where the ship started from?
Oh, no.
Just about 80 kilometers from where I am right now in Malaysia, Tanjung Palapas. So it started from Malaysia, presumably following the earlier news story, returning all the garbage that the Western countries have been feeding Malaysia. So that's probably what it was trying to do. So this was going from Malaysia to the Netherlands. And so this is the other interesting part. One other fact that kept floating around a lot, and I actually saw a lot of general as well as slightly racist humor being cracked about it, about how the entire crew of the ship were all Indians. Indian nationals. So the entire crew of the ship were Indian nationals, and a whole bunch of people were like, "Oh, obviously Indians don't know how to drive all that garbage." They
this explains the full loading of the ship, like how you and the dimensions of your baggage and stuff like that.
Maximize it.
Well done, Tony. Just thanks for getting that out of the way.
That part is very true. That could be very true of Indians, but the obstruction is actually nothing to do with the Indian crew at all. Because since 2008, there have been standard rules for navigation through the Suez Canal. So, I mean, this is not something that was caused out of entire neglect. This is actually probably the investigation is still going on. This is probably as blameless a situation as you can expect dealing with this particular canal. Because the one thing is, for the Suez Canal, because it's such a tricky section to navigate for most people who kind of drive ships, so to speak, navigate ships, is that there are Suez Canal pilots, specific Suez Canal pilots who are Egyptian trained from the Suez Canal Authority, who board the ship before the ship goes through the Suez Canal, and they are the guys who navigate the ship through the canal. So it's not the actual crew that navigates the ship, but the Suez Canal pilots who actually navigate the ship. So that ship was at that time also having those very experienced. In fact, they released a statement saying that the pilots who were on board were all among the most experienced from the Suez Canal Authority, primarily because of the fact that the ship is one of the largest. So they got their most experienced pilots on there. So then why did the ship crash as such or get blocked as such? So there are two reasons for it. One, which is fairly simple to understand, that this is obviously a container ship, right? Now, from a container ship point of view, this ship was carrying the capacity of the ship was about 20,000 odd TEU. That is 20-foot equivalent units, right? And TEU is basically one container is one TEU. 20-foot container is one TEU, right? And this 20-foot container has a capacity of 12 tons, each 20-foot container. So this had 20,000 odd TEUs.
It's more like 23 tons. Each 20-foot container is something like 23 tons, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, 12 or I don't know. I read 12, it might be 23, but whatever it is, multiplied by 23,000 was the actual volume of the ship, right? Now, with so many containers all stacked one on top of the other, what also happens obviously in the desert is a lot of dust storms, right? So what happened was at that time there was a big ass dust storm.
Like Sharjah 98.
Yeah, like Sharjah 98. and Sharjah 98 kind of blew at this container ship, and the containers acted as a sail, effectively. And they started steering the ship, like in that narrow canal when they were passing through, they steered the ship to such an extent that nobody could control it. And that caused the ship to hit the edges. Now, also what's important to understand is that a canal, even though it looks about that wide, it's actually even narrower than that, because the edges are actually they are shallower. They go down like that, and they basically like a bottom of a hexagon, right? So the second half, the bottom half of a hexagon, so it's slanted edges and a flat bottom, right? So when it steered towards the left, the depth of the ship immediately ran aground. So the ship ran aground before it even reached the edge of the canal, the visible edge of the canal. So that was the other one. There is
switched
also
between profundity of the week to shallowness of the week. Sorry.
Yeah, no, now I'm going to get into something even more physics based, and here is where I will expect my three engineering friends and one.
I knew this day would come. I knew this day would come.
Hold on, where is my
beads of perspiration now? Beads of perspiration appearing.
Bring it on.
Yeah, this is to do something with what is called the bank effect. All right, the bank effect is when passing through a narrow water body, the stern of the ship, which is the top edge of the ship, tends to veer towards the shore,
Correct.
it automatically tends to veer towards the shore because of the Bernoulli principle.
Hmm.
Now, this is all I
Venturi
studied.
effect,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
also
yeah.
the
Now I have
Venturi
no
effect.
idea what this is. So Naren, please
Yeah.
explain.
Yeah, so basically, when the gap narrows, the pressure drops in that gap, and the pressure outside on the other side of the gap is the same. So it tends to push. This is why two ships try not to go closer than 40 meters or something like that, because when the gap reduces between two ships which are passing each other in the ocean, this Venturi effect takes place, and they could easily collide. And once the drifting starts, the pilots are pretty powerless. Your rudder, nothing works, because you have these huge
Yeah.
hydrostatic forces acting on the ship.
The consumer way of thinking about this is if you're standing at the edge of a train and the door of a train, and you're moving, and there's another train coming in the other direction at a sufficiently high enough speed, despite the gap that's there between the rails, you could theoretically get sucked into the other train or in between.
Yeah.
It'll be awesome to actually do an experiment to see what's the right speed for you to be in that limbo state in the middle. No, just get sucked enough, but like dangle in the middle. I feel like Mountain Dew or Red Bull could do something.
Anyone who is doing that should please listen to our simplified podcast first, and then decide whether it's possible.
And
This is like the buttered cat paradox. No? This is the buttered cat paradox where what would happen? Like cats always land on their feet. If you put a piece of buttered toast on top of a cat and strap it to the top of a cat, what will happen is that the cat will suspend in midair and start spinning around. Basically, that is the buttered cat. That is the equivalent here. But yeah, so I mean, thanks Naren for saying that, because I read Bernoulli effect and I was like, nahi hoga
maise. Thank goodness. Tony and I are like the free riders in a group, right? And thankful one person knew the answer. Like our generation, all the good engineers, they have gone off to work for multinational financial corporations. That is our era ka bank effect.
Fantastic. The ship of US prosperity came too close.
Oh ship. I'm sure that was done. Oh ship, I'm sure was done a lot.
Anyway, so all that combined was what happened was that the ship effectively ran aground. It weird enough, and the base of the ship got mired in the soft mud on the bank of the canal. Now, obviously, the ship is longer than the canal is wide, and so when the one end got stuck, the other end went at the back and fully created one massive, beautiful blockage across the entire canal. And that's how it kind of got in that position. Now, what?
I sincerely wish you didn't draw that kidney stones analogy a while earlier, because my mind is going to all sorts of places right now. Please carry on.
You're telling me, but I experienced this entire thing. So when I saw that image of that mired ship, that's all I could think of.
At least be thankful that the mired ship happened after your operation.
Oh man! So what did they start doing to kind of like get the ship out? Firstly, the simple thing being that for a ship as heavy as this, I mean, you can't just simply put a tugboat and yank it out. That's
you can't do the thing on Indian highways where all of them get out and just push it.
पीछे के शिप से 2-3 बंदे आ
गए they tried tug jobs too.
Yeah, there's that old joke where the Indian engineer goes to NASA and he's like, tilt rocket at 45 degrees, then 45 degrees other way, and now give kick. This is how my scooter starts. So whatever joke was there, a similar thing on the Ever Given also, potentially, except for a mild problem of 24-ton containers just randomly falling off. So what they did was, first they evacuated all the remaining ships from the canal, because the thing was, primarily what they need the ship to refloat. The ship has stopped floating. It's basically gone aground, right? Because one edge is on the ground, the other edge is on the ground. Beech mein thoda pani hai. It's basically stuck on top of it's like sitting with your feet across a bathtub, with your bum inside the bathtub. So that was effectively what was happening with the ship here. So they had to refloat it. The whole ship, they had to refloat it. So first they removed all the ships so that the volume of water would increase. The second was they, of course, tried just tugging it, but that would be there. And also tugging indiscriminately at the ship had two issues. One was if they damaged the ship and if the ship sprung a leak, which luckily it didn't, because had the ship for going aground, had it actually had had sprung a leak or something, it would start taking water, and which would have made this entire operation like a couple of months at least before they could like plug out the leak and refloat the ship again. But so they discovered that there was no leak. So but if they tug the ship too hard, the containers would fall off, and so that would also be a big problem. So the other so basically there are two things that they did. That small, obviously the image that sparked a million memes, the backhoe standing against the massive ship trying to dig it out, was basically not trying to dig the ship out. It was just digging the canal, the edge of the canal out, so that there would be more water that came in front of the ship, allowed to it was not digging the ship out as such. But so they basically wanted more water to enter the side of that so that it would help in the refloating. And second, they got they got like other ships which were underwater diggers, and these ships actually these underwater excavators were like dug under the ship, where they kind of allowed for more water to enter from there. And finally they had also a plan, which in case this initial plan did work out, was to actually get really like get helicopters and airlift all the containers off the ship.
Wow.
And because then that would allow the ship to get lighter and therefore help the refloating. Luckily enough, in fact, this was actually as efficient a refloating operation as there has ever been, because they managed to do it.
Go on.
No, but what are you laughing about? Yeah.
I'm laughing because Tony is laughing and I know exactly what is going through his head right now. I know exactly what is going through his head right now. So Tony, please go for it. Here. Please go for it. This is all yours.
No, are you sure? Is this from
yes, this completely yes. I'm very sure this is what you're thinking. I will be devastated if this is not what you're thinking. Yeah.
Okay, I'm also not sure. There's this guy stuck on a boat and he has a cigarette, but no way of like igniting the cigarette. So what does he do?
These are all engineering college hostel jokes.
He
He
picks up some cargo from the boat and throws it out, so the boat becomes lighter. And then he uses that lighter to light the cigarette.
And the beautiful thing about this so-called joke is that there are subsequent versions of this also.
Yeah.
There's another one in which he takes a cigarette and he throws it up and then he catches it. Catches win matches. With that match, he lights the cigarette. And another one, Tony, if you want to do...
No, go ahead.
Is he bends down, he picks up some water and in his palm and then he does like this tip, 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 barsa pani.
Barsa pani, pani.
With that aag he lagas the cigarette.
Yeah. So this is the origin story of how Chuck and I met on one of these Orkut communities from back in the day.
Yeah. These are all...
But our eyes did meet in a wild surmise, as they call it. So
what?
Yeah, is there like a line from either Woodhouse Uses or something like that? No, Naren? Eyes met in a wild surmise.
You were eating. No. The thing is, you mistake that. Tony, after this, you and I went out for seafood lunch and our eyes met in a wild surmise.
You.
Please carry on.
Oh, God. Oh, my God. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Simplified, where we discuss both the Bernoulli principle and Tip Tip Barsa Pani.
And Malwani seafood.
Important fluid mechanics problems, yeah.
Fantastic.
This is what happens when you unleash Bernoulli's principle on 3 engineers.
But the Suez Canal episode is a good tug line for Simplified.
So,
Fast, Sriket. You've unleashed the beast.
Resume. Yeah.
14 days late on your...
I think so. Yeah, basically they floated the ship. Ship went over.
Oh, that's all. That's all. So, Tony, I don't know if this is there in the final cut of the Bugle episode because I saw the live thing. Alice Fraser had this beautiful question like, why did they just put wheels on the ship and put them on land? And the answer, I guess the reason I don't work in shipping is because I'm asking questions like that. But yeah. Yeah. So
But she also had another very nice line, which was that, I mean, this is such a up of epic proportions that no one would be fired for it. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, that's how bad it is. Yeah. Nobody can be blamed for this. Yeah.
But honestly, that's what really struck me as I was researching about this was literally the procedure, the way the entire process was happening. I read in quite detail about it, and I honestly can't find too many screw ups. So I can't find any screw ups really inside this process because the process worked exactly as it was supposed to. Right. The only thing I can say is like, oh, okay, they should have known better than to allow. They probably allowed a very large ship into this canal and whatever like that. But as such, I mean, the whole point of the canal is to let these massive ships pass through, and so they designed the norms according to that. It was just a really bad combination of circumstances, and once the issue occurred, they worked in record time to kind of do that and did it as quickly as possible. So this was actually a great end-to-end display of competence while dealing with unfortunate circumstances, which is very rare in today's day and age.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of stuff we usually cover.
Yeah, exactly. And another beautiful thing from that Bugle show, which Nish Kumar was also part of, Tony, you might remember this, is he said this is something that we can all universally make fun of because there are no like the ship didn't say anything racist. Nobody was dying as a result of this. Everybody was safe. Like it wasn't shipping contraband.
There are no two sides.
There are no two sides. So everybody universally can just enjoy and make fun of this. So here is to more ships getting stuck in the Suez Canal and the entire world just.
The Ever Given will disagree with you that there aren't two sides to this because it got stuck on both sides of the.
Oh, okay. Sorry, that's a very stern joke of stern observation.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there was one side story which I read about, which was the Egyptian authorities actually having a massive shortage of those trained Suez pilots. In fact, what happened is a lot of the trained Suez pilots who normally, in fact, right now, because there's a huge backlog that needs to be cleared, all the pilots who are actually on desk duty have all been put onto ship duty right now. So there's basically that. And in fact, old pilots who are in retirement are being called out to come back and do it, who have been retired for 5-10 years also to come back and kind of help this out because now they need to be extra careful about getting through the canal as such. And they need those trained guys. So because there's such a backlog, there's actually a real lack of trained Suez pilots right now.
Amazing. Like when you were saying that, I was thinking like this is not something that say artificial intelligence can solve. So which makes me think like in every field, like for people who are worried that their jobs will be taken up by artificial intelligence, they should plan screw ups like few years in advance. Like make human mistakes that only another human mind will be able to solve. Right, so that way, like I don't think like if the Suez Canal became like iSuez or something, like entire smart port, I don't think it could have solved the situation. Like how do you solve for something like this? Yeah,
like you said before we started recording, this is why you shouldn't have a smart toilet.
Well done.
I think our listeners deserve the full explanation of what you were saying.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I forgot what I said actually.
Basically, why there should be a smart toilet because of updates.
Oh yeah, because it may not allow you to poop. That's about it.
What?
Like the lid, you can't open the lid because OS is updating.
Yeah. Devices have a habit of updating when they are least expected to update, and once they start updating, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And in view of the urgency of certain processes, it is not advisable to have updatable devices into which you poop. So
Correct. So your lid will say things like downloading updates, so you can't download it. This is
excellent.
Suez. Back to Suez.
Yeah, no, so that's pretty much that.
That's
so
pretty much
basically, what happened is after the 8 days, they waited for also high tide. The other thing they
High
waited
tide.
for was the highest tide that they could get. And after the high tide, along with the high tide, coupled with the tugboats and all that stuff, they finally realigned the ship and kind of refloated it. And as soon as it was refloated, they kind of slowly navigated it out and they put it on the side. Surprisingly, the ship was, in fact, they've almost completed the checks, and I think they've determined that the ship is completely seaworthy. There's no problems despite the grounding in any way. So the ship is absolutely fine. So in fact, it might just continue its route back, except they will all be really looking at it. And,
when it comes back,
Yeah,
when it comes back, it'll be like that.
But actually, a lot of credit to these guys for slowly moving. If it was me, I would have taken it out full speed here. Moment put it on fifth gear and all.
Row.
This is like those idiots who are barish mein, like in water, when the car gets stuck, they are like full accelerator and then the water goes in the engine. This is that kind of logic. No, but and like Chuck, that's what I think. I was also saying, if the ship has to pass through the Suez Canal, there's a whole world. And like news crews will be live tracking it.
I think they may just make it. I think they may just make it like a ceremony. I think that will be a pretty cool thing. When this particular ship passes through Suez, they'll it'll be a tourist event. I feel I would if I were in Egypt or something, I would go. Ever Given's coming, but you know what?
There will be a little bell at the end. You ring it and.
This is reminds me of when my dad was learning how to drive, and the driving instructor who was there, he had a habit every time my dad did reverse, he would be like sitting at the baju wala seat and saying bach ke.
So this is actually I was looking through, like, I knew this is one of the biggest ships in the world. So it's a 399.96 meters long, Bradmanian. As it were. And what's interesting is that so all the Ever ships, right, and there are about 10-15 of them, the Golden, Genius, Gifted, etc. Ever Given is the only one that has a Wikipedia page of its own. Gross tonnage is, it can carry 219,000 gigatons. Oh wait, that's gross tonnage. No, that's gross tonnage. Gross tonnage. Wow, I saw GT and I thought it was gigaton, which I've never heard of before. Gigaton, by the way, is the name of Pearl Jam's last album.
Wow. Hey, there's a nice simplified The Origin of Things crossover from the last time the Suez Canal was blocked during the First World War. And basically there was like 5,000 tons of sandalwood stuck in Mysore. And that's when Krishnaraja Wadeyar said, okay, this can't be shipped. We need to do something with it. And he summoned someone called Soap Shastri and created Mysore sandalwood soap.
Wow, so amazing.
I
feel there's a tongue twister in there somewhere. What would a sandalwood do if...
How much wood would a
sandalwood?
Soap Shastri. I want that title. I want to be known as Soap Shastri. I am a Soap Shastri. That's so awesome.
This reminds me of a headline that was there, which I read somewhere in Times of India. There was a headline saying Idli master kills dosa master with 75 kilos sack of rice. And I was like, what a beautiful headline, dude.
Yeah. There's another incredible headline that I read recently. How the
Soap Shastri watches on. Soap Shastri is the main witness.
So this is another beautiful headline. How the opening of the Suez Canal transformed Mumbai and its sex trade. The explanation being the city's port boomed and Eastern European women started working in its brothels. So there we go. The Suez Canal has led to a whole bunch of things. The main sort of takeaway from all this for the world, I guess, was in a year where we've all been so digitized. We have come to realize that how much of the world is actually physical, or how much the stuff that we order online.
I don't know if so this wasn't covered, and probably everyone knows it, but I'll just slip it in any case. Suez Canal basically gave rise to Bombay and killed Calcutta. So
Oh,
before
no.
Yeah.
the Suez Canal, it was harder to get to Bombay than Calcutta because the monsoon winds were mostly working. The regular. Oh, you could go only in the monsoon. So after you turned the Cape of Good Hope, getting to Bombay was much harder. So they would
Okay.
carry on further, go around Ceylon, Sri Lanka, and then go to Calcutta because all the winds were favorable. And that's why Calcutta became the center for British, presence in India. And when the Suez Canal opened, that made Bombay much more accessible, and that gave rise to
Wow.
Interesting.
and that slowly led to the decline of Calcutta in the British scheme of things and made Bombay more important.
Wow.
In a related context, the creation of the Manchester Canal was the one that allowed for better access of ships that were coming in via the Cape of Good Hope pre-Suez Canal era.
Hmm.
That ships would directly now be able to reach the industrial city of Manchester, and this led to which important rivalry, Chuck?
I'm
What do you think?
guessing. I'm guessing Liverpool versus Man United.
Liverpool-Manchester rivalry was the foundations are found in the creation of the Manchester Ship Canal, where Liverpool was the important port city, and because of the Manchester Canal, Liverpool's importance went down quite significantly because ships could directly go to Manchester, and that created the rivalry between Liverpool and Manchester, and helps led to the Liverpool-Manchester United rivalry.
And as I elucidate in another Origin of Things episode, Manchester United really has its shipping industry to thank for the clubs. Actually, it was a assortment of those guys who worked in shipping and the whole industry that came about it that had their own individual FCs, football club, and Manchester United initially was called something else, some Heath or something. Newton Heath, correct. Yeah, correct. Newton Heath FC. Yeah. Newton Heath was one of these suppliers or something like that, and pretty interesting. A dog was involved. That's one of the old Origin of Things episodes. No, a dog was involved. A dog was involved.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. A dog was involved. So what happened was.
Is this an extinction story? Is there
no,
it's the cat that killed all the dodos?
No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And sorry, this is a complete deviation from the Suez Canal. But then again, what happened to the Suez Canal did lead to a complete deviation in any case. So what happened was the owner of Newton Heath FC, they didn't have any money. So they were considering closing the club. And then the owner or one employee who was very, very gung-ho about the club, he sent his pet dog out to collect funds, like with one of those, please give to save our local football club. And the dog got lost. But what happened is it was picked up by the daughter of a local millionaire or something like that. And the millionaire took pity on the whole thing, funded the whole thing. And then that became Man United. So to this day, that dog is celebrated at United.
Oh, wow.
At Man United.
That's really cool.
Yeah, there's an entire story about this. Yeah. Fascinating. Wow. How did I know something about football that you didn't?
It's what Manchester United does.
I'm just looking through the map of the world, and so there are these strategic points, right? So there's a Panama Canal, there is Suez, there is the Strait of Malacca. I'm just thinking, where else in the world right now could like this be cut down, like where transport could be cut down.
So the Panama Canal actually is supposed to be, it's actually broader than the Suez Canal, but it can actually accept lesser tonnage than the Suez Canal can. Because of some dimensions or some stuff like that.
The Panama Canal Funda is different. The two oceans that it connects, the Pacific and the Atlantic, they're at different levels. So you need to, so you can't just open it.
The sea level is not the sea level.
Yeah, sea level is not the sea level. Yeah.
No, that's at sea level, the other one is at B level.
Yeah.
Have we reached the...
So they need to have locks. Yeah. It's an engineering masterpiece. So you have locks, pump in water, you raise it, pump in. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. If we started with Arab Christians, maybe we can end on one note too. There's this nice post that I saw, which was someone saying, okay, stuck in Egypt, then freed during Passover. Subtle God, very subtle.
That is just the most brilliant thing. Brilliant, just brilliant.
Masterful.
Yeah. So you should give a background of the Passover festival for this. Yeah. That's celebrating the escape of the Jews from Egypt, right?
Egypt,
The
yeah.
Pharaoh.
Egypt.
Yeah.
The most interesting thing about this is that in a world of where everything is polarized, there's one thing everyone could laugh, joke, and follow together without any bias. So a rare spot of non-controversy in a lot of in a controversial world today. So Naren, you want to sign us off?
Yes. So stay safe and stay afloat and stay simplified.
Wow, stay safe, stay afloat.
Guys,
I think we
see you
finally have a
guys next
t-shirt
week.
slogan.
Yeah, stay afloat.
Super. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, Siet Tires and thewholetruthfoods.com. So this week on Advertising is Dead, Varun was joined by Mansi Zaveri. She shares her experience of running a community for parents of young kids and teenagers and of hosting a podcast along the same lines. Gauri Devidayal was joined by Divya Thani on This Round is on Me. Divya works as a global editorial director with Condé Nast Traveler. They discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly of a travel writer's job. On Candid Kanan, Sid is in conversation with Adarsh Gaurav, who recently scored a BAFTA nomination for his role in the Netflix adaptation of The White Tiger. They talk about his role in the show, life pre and post stardom, and so much more. On Agla Station Adulthood, Ritash and Aishi talk about the precious time and opportunities lost to the lockdown and share their post-COVID wish list. When it comes to cricket this season, we have you covered. In English, we have Edges and Sledges, which do their show live on YouTube. They look for announcements over there. And for our Hindi listeners, we have Khel Neeti, hosted by Rajiv Mishra and ex-Indian cricketer Sabah Kareem. This show is live streamed on YouTube every day at 9:15. Definitely do check these out and hope to see you again next week.
If you love cricket, listen up. The Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast is here for you. Hosted by DJ, Varun, and me, Ashwin, we bring a fun, fresh fan's point of view to talking all things cricket. Sometimes it's just the three of us, sometimes we have guests, including current and former international cricketers. For new episodes every week, check out the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast on the IVM app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.